JT Crowley is Talking Books. On the show, you'll hear from emerging talent and seasoned veterans from around the world.
Hello, I'm JT Crowley, and I'm delighted to say that I have another author for you, Gennie de Lange from Auckland in New Zealand, to talk about her amazing book, We Will Never Forget. It's a book of 50 short poems. Most of them have a war-related theme to them. And when you look at the book, you'll see a picture on the corresponding page, which is actually a photograph of a ceramic tile that has been painted on. And these tiles, everybody, these ceramic tiles are the work of Gennie herself. So she's a writer and she's an artist with the ceramic tiles. The picture depicts the poem in art form. That's what it is. So when you look at the book, everybody, on the page, the spread page, you'll see the poem on one side and you'll see the art form, the ceramic photographs on the other. They are telling you all about the poem. One's written and one's telling you it through the visual side of the images, the photographs. They are brilliant, they are vibrant, they are so good, everybody. Now, when you look at the photographs, most of them is going to have a soft toy in it, and the soft toy is called the observer. What's the history behind the observer? Find out later. Now, I've been chatting to Gennie on and off for the last couple of weeks, and as you can imagine, it's a long way to chat from the United Kingdom to Auckland. So we've been on Zoom and we've been doing emails and messages just purely so that we can put this podcast together for you guys to enjoy, look at, and get a glimpse to see what Gennie de Lange's book is about and her work. This is what she's coming on the show today to talk about. So I'm going to stop talking, which many of my friends will go, that will be a miracle. And I'm going to invite her on the show so that she can actually do the talking herself about herself and her book. Gennie de Lange from Auckland, New Zealand. Come and join me on Talking Book Show.
Hello, John. It's very kind of you to have me on the show. I think I'm extremely lucky, and you're a very good interviewer.
And isn't technology amazing? We are 12,000 miles apart and we are 13 hours in time-wise apart. So for me, this was 8 o'clock at night, and for Gennie, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. There you go, everybody. So Gennie, before we start, start opening the book, can you tell, everybody, the audience, the listeners, who is Gennie de Lange? What is this book about? Why did you write it?
This came about because I saw the news about the Ukrainians and how a nuclear power had invaded them. And I was appalled that if the Ukrainians were to lose this battle with the Russians, that the Russians would take it into their heads that they could walk into any other country in Europe. And I think we forget how important the Ukraine is, the breadbasket of Europe. It also feeds North Africa with sunflower oil and all sorts of wheat. And I think it's a very vital part of Europe.
So when you look at the book, everybody, there are 50 short poems to this magnificent book. As I said, it's very bright, it's very colourful, and the poems, they're very short, but very poignant, and they are to the point. Now, we're not going to talk about all the 50 poems because that's not the point of the podcast. The whole idea of the podcast is to talk about a few of the poems so that you get a flavour as to what Gennie de Lange's writing is about, her poems, and also to glimpse some of the magical photographs of her ceramic tiles that she's done over the years. So how we're going to do this, everybody, is that I'm going to read, we've chosen some poems. I'm going to read some of them, and Jenny's going to read the others. And at the end of the poem, I'm going to ask Gennie to explain to us all what that poem is about and talk to us about the artwork that accompanies that poem. So I'm going to go to the poem that starts off with the line, "In the endless fields." Now, this is a great poem, everybody. In the endless fields of wheat, hollow men and children hide. But wheat is no protection. Now, I'm not certain here, but I think, Gennie, that you are referring here to the wheat fields of Ukraine, which have had, due to the war from, with Russia, there's been a huge impact on the wheat provided around the world. Am I right? Or is this a wheat field, or you're talking about somewhere else that you've in the long distance past that you've seen?
You're completely right, because this is what I saw when I was trying to write this book. I looked back over the years at the works that I've done, and this one happened to be about Australia. And Australia is a huge island with only a narrow strip down one side that they can exist from. But the Australians seem to forget that the Aboriginals have lived there for 75,000 years. And they have so much. How did they manage to do that? And so I feel that the Aboriginals are really the hollow men. And so this whole series was about hollow men. But here we have the sky with the blackbirds flying in the sky, who always symbolize death. So that is how I see the situation in the Ukraine.
Because when I look at that book, it's so vibrant, the blue sky and the gold and orange of the wheat fields or the sunflowers. Now, Gennie, if you just close the book for a minute and show us the front of the book. Now, look at the front of the book, everybody. Yes, the title is "We Will Never Forget," because we are, some of the poems it says are war related. But if you look at the color of the front book, everybody, it's blue on the top and it's yellow on the bottom. It's the colors of the Ukrainian flag. But Gennie, what's on that front cover? What is it? Wheat fields? Is it sunflowers? What is it?
It probably is the sky and the sunflowers, but it is a close-up of one of my works. So you can see very, very clearly how glaze behaves when it's been in the kiln. And so this, fortunately, we've got an explosion here. And the wonderful thing about glaze is that it changes so much in the kiln from being just dusty grays. Then when it comes out, I have this marvelous surprise of these jewel-like stained glass images appear.
It's very vibrant, the book cover, and yes, it's very poignant with the colors of the Ukrainian flag. Now,
and it's glazed. Sorry to interrupt, but as well, I made them print it with an extremely high, shiny glaze, a glazed. I think that's what the printers call it, paper, so that it looks like a tile, which is very shiny.
It does indeed, everybody. It does indeed. Now, I'm going to read the next poem, and it starts off with "We Must Flee." There we go. There's the artwork that goes with it. So, we must flee, leaving behind father, dog, grandparents. Everything is turned upside down. Where's the origins of this poem from, Gennie? And talk to me about the artwork here.
The origins of the poem is the fact that so many families in the Ukraine have been split up. There are orphanages in the west of the Ukraine that are taking in children who have been separated from their parents, and the origin of is of the pain of leaving behind grandparents. I'm sure often the grandparents are left behind because they do not want to leave their land, their farms, their little houses where they've got all their memories.
And the colours there in the artwork, again, is just phenomenal. You know, the red characters, the blue, the gold, stunning.
It's
How do you
also, when
achieve
I
that?
did the series, this whole series actually was done long, long ago, probably in the 80s. And I was doing a series of settlers' houses in New Zealand. And so it's part of a house and just a family, perhaps mother taking her children to school or maybe leaving a battered situation where she wasn't happy. It's a human situation where mothers take their children.
Ah. Now, I've done 2 of the poems, everybody, and Jenny is going to do the next one. And it starts with The Dog Watched. Jenny,
The
care to read?
dog watched, oh, sorry. The dog watched them disappear, took up sentry duty, prepared to fight beside those left behind, scavenging for drinking water from hollows and craters like everyone else.
Now, I think you're talking about here is that when people, you know, for whatever reason, have to leave their homes, abandon their homes, the pets get left behind. Am I right? Is this what you are talking about here? Or is
Yes,
it something
I
else?
no, I think that the ones left behind, probably their pets stay with them. But you're perfectly right. I'm quite sure that in a lot of wars, the pets do get eaten. I actually have a recipe for casserole of cat from the Spanish War. But in this one, I had been in Spain and seen these marvelous sculptures coming out of buildings, were completely whimsical chairs. And so I thought to myself, well, why can't a dog, which is completely nonsensical, stand on a chair? It just seems that sometimes you have to turn a life into, have a humorous slant, otherwise you get ground under.
You do. Yeah, you do have to have a sense of humor in life. And I've been chatting to Jenny and you know, a couple of times now, and we have had a bit of a laugh doing this, everybody. But I want to go to her next poem, and it's headed up Clinging to Homes. Clinging to homes, unjustly taken, fruit and vegetables will grow again. Short poem, like all of her poems. Why did you write this poem? And what are you getting at here?
I'm getting at the fact that no matter what happens to a country, that bulbs and plants and trees will always come back again. You can't suppress a country. That it's very important to know that things go on growing forever, even if they're crushed by rubble. And
And
in this one, sorry,
no.
I was going to say that this one was inspired long ago by the white villages in Spain with stripes underneath. And the stripes often signify the layers of life that we have, like a sandwich. That we have good layers and bad layers, and life goes on.
And so I quite like the line here, unjustly taken. Of course, in war, property and houses are unjustly taken, aren't they?
Most definitely, without anybody being able to protect them, and people knock people over. I hate to think what actually happens to people. But I think you go back into the rubble and you find tiny pieces of your past, which reminds you forever and ever, and you keep those as souvenirs.
Now, I quite liked this next poem, which you're going to read. and it's headed up, "There must be a way out of here." And I just think, how poignant is this? Would you care to read it for us?
There must be a way out of here. When bewildered by situations, talking, daring to laugh, changes the atmosphere.
And the artwork, the photograph. There you've got the observer, the soft toy in most of them. Talk to me about the picture there, the image, and how does it relate to the poem?
It relates to the poem because it's got ladders in it. In life, I've often put ladders so that you can escape from horrible situations. And I think that one has always the feeling that things are going to get better, that you will be able to climb out of a situation. And so that's why you've got these layers of life, and the observer, who is standing in a corner there.
Yes, I'll come to the observer, everybody, towards the end. Now, the poem starts with, "The new year brings courage." There it is.
The new year brings courage. Slush. Freezing temperatures add to the resolve. No one can bully a country out of existence.
Where are you talking about here? Any country in particular, or do you talk about Ukraine? Are you talking about any other war-torn country?
I think in this one, I'm particularly talking about the Ukraine, because I do realize that the new offensive often begin after spring, and it's extremely difficult to move machinery during spring because of the slush. But I think that spring for everybody is a time when you think that life is going to start over again. I'm sure that's why people get engaged and lives start.
Trying to work the connection out there. Trying to work the connection out there.
Yes.
Yeah. Never thought of it that way. Now, I'm going to read the next poem, everybody. And so I hope you're starting to get a flavour of what Gennie de Lange's book is about, the artwork and the poems coinciding together. So this one is, there we go, "In memory of Dr. Andrew Bagshaw. In a quandary, what to do. Aid workers from all over the world risk everything to bring comfort and save lives." Powerful, isn't it, this poem?
This one is about the son of a friend. He was a doctor doing scientific work in Oxford when he was made redundant. And then this young man, I suppose in his 40s, decided in his bewildered state, what should I do next? He went to the Ukraine to become an aid worker. And while he was helping an old lady out of a building, he was shot. He's actually the son of a colleague. The parents are amazing people. The father is a doctor in Christchurch who has set up a free hospital, and his wife, Dame Susie Bagshaw, has been, you can't say knighted, damehooded, and she works with sexually transmuted diseases, but in young people particularly, and particularly for girls who can't speak to their mothers. She has a clinic you can go and talk to. So this is a very compassionate family, and no wonder the boy went off and did this.
Sexually transmitted diseases, everyone.
That's
the word she was looking for. I know.
Yes.
And because you've got 4 images there, and in the background, it's you've got white, you've got gold, you've got red, and you've got dark blue.
This one is taken. The work was made in 2011,
Yeah.
after the Christchurch earthquake. And that was a major earthquake which almost destroyed the whole of the South Island's largest city, Christchurch. And so this is how we all felt. We didn't know what to do. So everybody was terribly bewildered, and you can see the background, how the houses are just completely smashed to bits, and the whole thing is about dismay and how are we going to rebuild this place.
Yes, I can remember when I was in Christchurch, because I've been to New Zealand twice. I was in Christchurch and we stayed at the Heritage Hotel, it was called. And opposite, you just walked across to the cathedral there. And when the 2011 earthquake struck, of course, the cathedral being an old building, a lot of it fell down. So when I saw the pictures of the 2011 earthquake, I recognized the places in Christchurch where I've been just the year before. I'm thinking, oh dear. Anyway, they have moved on. So we need to move on, everybody, because I want to go to another poem, and I'm going to get Gennie to read this one. And it starts off with "The chair stands empty."
The chair stands empty, the cushion hollowed by his imprint. Like the butterflies, will he return next summer?
And look at the picture of the chair, everybody. The butterfly image, the empty chair. What's the meaning there, behind that artwork, Gennie?
This is a series that I did. Instead of doing portraits of people, I did portraits of their chairs, because I think you sit in the same chair so often that your imprint is left there. And this happened to be made the chair of Rodney Kennedy, who was a splendid chap, very small, very energetic, who was made theatre and plays in Dunedin. And somehow or other, he also supported a great many artists and kindly supported me.
And like in many of the photographs, there is the velvet toy, the observer. Talk to us about the observer.
The observer is
The
actually
observer.
100 years old. The
Ah,
observer is 100 years old. He belonged to my father-in-law, and he must have actually bought him after he had finished medical school in 1924. And a third of the class had died from infection. And so I think Pops, as I call my father-in-law, bought this toy because Mickey Mouse, at that time, and I'm allowed to use that word because the copyright has gone, Mickey Mouse had just been created. And I think that Pops thought that if he had a mascot or a lucky charm, that might help him through life. Now, Mickey Mouse has actually been to war because he went with Pops to help him in a prisoner of war camp, which was outside Cairo in tents, and most of the prisoners were Italian tailors. And to begin with, they made boring old uniforms. But Pops was an entertainer, and he thought this was terribly tedious, and so he suggested that the tailors, who probably were young men themselves, should make glamorous clothes for all those young boys and girls, because they were so young, they were boys and girls, who were on leave from the horrors of war. Mickey
there you
Mouse
go,
is just
everyone.
velvet.
There you go, everyone. That's what the observer's about. Now, I'm about to pull a little surprise here on Gennie because she doesn't know I'm going to go to this poem. And I think it's on pages 55, 56. I'm going to read it because I think it's very, very poignant. 10,000 Ukrainian women defend the front lines. On Finland's border, extra women volunteer to protect their land. Now that is a beautiful, beautiful poem, and that's why I threw it in, because it's so poignant. The role that women do in war situations is so important.
In fact, in case everybody thinks I'm making it all up, I've actually probably read about some of these things in The Guardian and various other places. So it's AI not going wonky. They have, before the last summer or spring, they altered the uniforms to make them all smaller so they could have 10,000 more women. And the little girl who comes on Sunday and we make pottery together, her granny helps mend the nets, which are the camouflage nets. And I know that the Finnish women aren't usually called up compulsorily, but they have volunteered to form brigades to guard their borderland. I think they're amazing.
Yes, the role of women in war, everybody, is so important. And that's why I sprung that one, because I thought it was nice and I liked it. That's my favorite one throughout the whole book. And I thought, I'm not going to tell Jenny I'm going to read this one. So I surprised her. And you could look, the look on her face went, oh. Now, Jenny, what's next for you? Are there any more books coming down the line like this one? Are you going to do anything? What's coming down the line?
Well, I haven't stopped these poems because they began a long time ago before this. I do a post that goes out every Saturday morning to a great many people and friends. And so since this is only the first 50, I've got to 132 of these poems and pictures. They go out every week. And I suppose they are about, I feel I mustn't stop because I feel sorry for the Ukraine at the moment. People have forgotten about them. There are other distractions in the world. And so I don't really mind what happens next. I just think we must remember, we must never forget that these people are making life reasonable for us, but they have to suffer to do that.
Am I right in saying, Jenny, that some of the proceeds, from the sale of this book are going to Ukrainian orphanages?
Yes, I found a way of getting money into the Ukraine. I know I have this child who comes every Sunday, but her father was sent by his father when he was 16 out of the Ukraine. His father said to him, I would like you to go to university somewhere else in the world because I know that there's corruption in business here. So Kostya came to New Zealand when he was 16 and he's now 31. Now, Kostya's father is the one who is buying equipment that we can give to orphanage families. To begin with, I just wanted to give money to hospitals, but I discovered from Kostya's father that it was very, very difficult. The money would disappear. And if you gave to the Red Cross in the Ukraine, the money goes straight into Russia. There is completely no control of that. And so I asked, Kostya's, the Russian grandparents come to New Zealand every year. They're obviously well-to-do. They live in the West, and asked them, could they possibly find orphanages? And they said, well, what about old people? Old people are starving in the Ukraine. And I said, no, I want children in hospitals. And they looked very dubious about this, but Kostya's father went back to the Ukraine, and 2 weeks later, he came back to me and explained that in the Ukraine, they have what are called orphanage families. And orphanage families are people who have taken between 5 and 10 or 12 children in and adopted them. They probably lost their parents. And these children, so that the grandfather then kindly went out and he visited the families and asked the families, what do you need? And we expected them to say washing machines if you've got 5 or 10 children. And they said, no, please, could we have computers? Because we'd like to go to university. We only have one computer to 10 children. So the first tranche of money that I was able to send into the Ukraine straight to the grandfather, Kostya, he went and he bought 2 computers, and I've seen photographs and had letters back from the children saying they think a miracle's happened. It must be like that.
It must be. Now, who would you like to see reading your book, Gennie? All generations or particular generations, people with all varieties of abilities? Who?
I think so, but I think that it's probably important that teenagers read this book. I've noticed that when I published it in New Zealand, the publisher's daughter, who was a teenager, wanted to come and talk about the book because people are curious about what it was like to be, what it's like to be in war, being in the crossfire. Now, I'm so old that I actually was alive in the last war, and I can remember what it was like when my father came home and told us about the war, which apparently is quite unusual. Most people, when you ask your father what was the war like, they don't speak. Well, Daddy actually always, he must have been on an adrenaline high, or it must have been a way of coping. He came back and talked about the camaraderie, the daredevil, the courage, the terror, but always he would say, I think I'm here on borrowed time. So he could never understand why he had escaped this trauma.
And, so many of them who came back from the wars never talked about their experiences. They couldn't. So now, if you want to find out a little bit more about this book, everybody, you can go to Gennie de Lange's webpage. Now, you'll see that webpage in the written introduction that accompanies this podcast. You can click there and go and have a look and see what she's about and buy the book from there. Or simply, you can go to Amazon and get it, or on the Web Talk Radio page on Talking Books, which this podcast is going out on. You'll see at the bottom of the written introduction the Amazon link. Click it and enjoy reading the book.
May I ask you, excuse me, may I say that the only books that I can give money from selling are in New Zealand at the moment. So any other books that you buy, sadly, won't go to these Ukrainian orphans.
A lot of Kiwis, get buying.
Yes, these Kiwis.
So it's been a huge privilege, Gennie, to talk to you over the last few weeks, finding out a little bit about yourself and Ronald, who is not too far away, everybody. And Ronald is Gennie's husband, and I know he's listening, earwigging in just by the side there. We did ask him to move away because he was walking and I could see his shadow on the wall. So he had to move away, everybody. But he's just there in the background. And I would just like to say to him, thank you also. It's been a great pleasure to chat to you and for helping Gennie to come on the podcast. Thank you both.
And he compiled the book.
He did indeed. So he does deserve some credit. I'm JT Crowley. Thanks for listening wherever you're in the world. Until next time, stay safe.